right, come on. Is that all the louder we can get the music in here? Seriously? I'm trying to get pumped up here. Come on! Yes! There we go. All right, stop. All right, I'm pumped up now. I like to get pumped up a little bit before my talks, you know? Especially after a long day of technical stuff, you know, you're writing down notes, all this technical, you're taking pictures of the screen, because you can't possibly remember what's happening up there. So a little eye of the tiger, I find, always gets me in the mood. So who am I? I go by Mojambo online. I know it's a weird name. That's okay. You can take a picture of the screen. I put it in extra big letters for you, so it would show up all the way in the back. That's my Twitter handle. My name is Tom Preston Werner. I know down here you like to just say Tom Preston, but it's actually the whole thing. Tom Preston Werner. That's cool. I understand cultural differences. I blog at tom.prestonwerner.com. You should be able to remember that one as long as you remember my name. So that should be easy. I work at a place called GitHub. Who here uses GitHub? Oh my God, I love you. And that music was amazing too. That wasn't me. I wish that was me. It sounded really nice. So you might want to know a little bit more about me. And so, first of all, I am a co-founder of GitHub. I'm also the CTO of GitHub. And I'm really good at losing my laptop, it turns out. I had an incident yesterday at Cafe Tortino. I was sitting down with my friends, if you can imagine, having my churros con chocolate. This is so good, so good. A couple comes along and drops their phone on the floor. Oh my God, they dropped their phone, we said. She picked it up and started asking us questions in a strange language. It might have been Spanish. I'm not sure, honestly. What? I don't know. You want the Wi-Fi password? I don't. What? Meanwhile, a third party comes by and snatches my bag, much to my unawares, and hence, no more computer. So, you might think that that is a tragedy. However, I'm sorry, I should be standing here still. However, that means that I only lost the last couple of weeks of work that I did on a couple of presentations and a blog post. Everything else was backed up. Don't worry. Everything's cool. But it does mean that I lost the slides that I prepared for this talk at the previous place where we were in Santiago. But that means that you get a brand new, all original Tom Preston Werner talk. So I hope that you're ready for my super sexy talk. Prepared just for you, my friends. So let me ask you this. I'm interested in business. You can tell because of my dashing sport coat. I'm interested in business and how to build a great company. What does it take to do that? And so I like to start with the fundamental question, which is, why do companies exist? And you're thinking to yourself a bunch of different things. And I bet a lot of you are thinking, well, because money, of course. Because of cold, hard cash. Right? That's why companies exist. Yeah? But is that true? Is that really true? Do you want to optimize your company for profit, which is what would come of that kind of thinking? Or do you want to optimize it for something else? I want to ask you a question, or demonstrate that companies are not primarily existing because of money, by doing what I call a subtraction proof. So think about a company, and think of an aspect, and then subtract it. So let's take away money. You know what? At the same time, let's take away profit and product from your company. Then what do you have? Well, you just have a startup, right? But if you take away people, if you remove people from a company, what's left? Exactly. So that is why I think that companies exist for the people. And so, what does a company that is optimized for profit look like? Can we demonstrate through additional means that that's not the way to do things? Everybody knows Mr. Burns, he is driven by profit. I've worked for places that are driven by profit before. They do things like charge you for soda in the soda machine. Why do they do that? Why is that? Because they're going to save some money? Is that why? If I were to drink one soda every day, which is reasonable, one soda every day for a whole year, that's maybe 5 a week, 50 weeks if I don't take any vacations. That's 250 sodas. You figure, I don't know, a quarter a pop. That's like $35. They're going to save $35 because, why? Because of the profit motive. Because that kind of company is optimized for profit. And so when I talk about happiness, what I'm really talking about is soda. Kind of, right? But you get what I mean? It's these little things. So how are things different in a company that's optimized for happiness? There's a neat little trick that I like to use when deciding what to spend my time on. I call it the deathbed filter. It works like this. Think about when you're old and gray, and you're in some bed at a hospital, you're close to death, and you think back on your life, and you wonder, was it worth it to do the things that I did? Was it worth it to take that trip to Argentina to go to that awesome conference? And of course, the answer is yes. And additionally, is it worth it to work at a business that doesn't treat you like a person, that doesn't value your existence? I think that if I'm going to spend my life making a company successful, then the company should also spend its time making sure that I'm happy. That's what I want. That's what I want out of life. I think that's what most people want. And if I'm correct in this, if I'm correct in saying that people are really where it's at, then money is just a side effect. And don't get me wrong, I like money as much as the next guy. And in fact, it allows you to build an even better company that can be even more well optimized for happiness. But I don't think optimizing for money directly is the way to get there. I think that optimizing for happiness and optimizing for people is the best way to get there. So here's my hypothesis. My hypothesis is that by investing in humans, instead of treating them like cogs in a machine that are easily thrown away or replaced, or you should not even oil them with soda, that you can build a better company, a more awesome, a more successful company, a company that will fulfill not only your dreams, but the dreams of your workers as well, by investing in those people. So let me tell you about how GitHub began. Every story has a beginning. I'm sorry. Every story has a beginning. This is ours. So where did we start? When I talk to people about startups and how to start one, I often give a suggestion, which is, every time you come across a problem, every time you run into a situation where you get pissed off, just write it down. I carry a little notepad all the time, even when I'm speaking, that I write down little ideas in. You can't have this book because this is where all the rest of my startups are going to come from. But it would be cool if you had one too. And I find that every time you run into a problem, every time you're pissed off, just take a moment and write it down. And then reflect on those ideas later on. For us, we were playing with Git. We started using it for a couple of open source projects. And we found that Git was amazing. All the branching, the offline committing, everything was great. Except you couldn't share the damn thing. Which doesn't make any sense because Git is about taking commits and moving them from place to place, and all the code is everywhere, and everyone's happy, right? But that was impossible because there was no way to do it easily. And so, sitting there, we said, and by we, I mean these people here in the beginning. This is myself in the middle, of course. Chris Wansteroth on the right, and PJ Hyatt on the left. we were hanging out at the local Ruby meetup in San Francisco, talking about Git and what it might be, what it might become. And we decided, you know what? We're web developers. Maybe we can do something about this. I think all of us web developers are in a unique position today because we can build companies without any money. In fact, GitHub was bootstrapped from the beginning. We never took investment for this company, and so we just did it on the side. I'd go home from work every day and I'd work on the project. I'd spend nights and weekends sitting around with Chris and PJ or have dinner at the local bar, and we'd talk about GitHub, about what we were going to do next. And that was really valuable. It took 3 months from when we started working on it to get a private beta out to just our friends. It took an additional 3 months to go from there to a public beta where we started charging. And as soon as we did that, Ruby on Rails moved over from Subversion, which started this avalanche of Ruby developers coming to GitHub. And it was awesome. And we did all of this on the side while we were working other jobs. I was working at a company called PowerSet. Chris and PJ were working on their own startup called Airfree, doing consulting and building their own product. And so we started slowly. This is the graph of how many people we've had over time. You can see in the beginning, we only had a few people for a very long time. And only recently have we started to really ramp up that growth. Today we're 47 people, and we're still bootstrapped. We've still never taken a single dollar of investment from outside the company. We think that our customers are our investors. They are the people that use the product. They're the ones that are most invested in it, and they tell us that by paying us money. Oh, thanks, Batman. I thought so too. Oh, and yes, that is Comic Sans. I'll let you have a brief moment to realize what just happened. All right, so that's kind of how GitHub started, a taste of the GitHub history. So now let's look more deeply at optimizing for happiness and how we do it at GitHub. Since I've totally convinced you that people are the most important part of a company, let's start with that, people. Like every startup, we started small, just the 3 of us. We're getting a lot bigger now, and most of what I'm going to talk about today didn't happen in the beginning. It took time to get there. It's taken a long time for us to do that. We've been around for 4 years. And so I want you to keep that in mind, that what I talked about, this is what we do, what I'm going to say is what we do today. Initially, it was smaller things. And we built them up over time because it's a continuous investment in people. So here's that graph again of our team size. We grew super slowly. We started with 3. At the end of 3 years, we were only 14 people. And at the beginning of the 4th year, we said, you know what? We're making a little bit of profit now. We're actually getting some decent profit, money in the bank. Let's take that money and reinvest it into the company in terms of additional hires. And that's why you see that big spike at the 14. That's the 3rd year. That's January of this year. So we're up to 47 people now. And the way that we approach problems is through this. One of the guiding principles that we have, and it's creating superfans by crafting experiences. And no, I'm not talking about this kind of fan. I'm talking about this kind of fan. Right? The kind of fan that goes to a basketball game, puts on a Speedo, and just dances, because he has to. Woo, bam! God, I'm going to do that. You guys can come with me if you want, but you have to put on a Speedo. So that's the kind of superfan I'm talking about, right? Someone that loves something so much that they will ignore all rules of decency and logic to be a part of something. And so that's what I mean by superfan. And by crafting experiences, I mean thinking about things from the user and the customer's perspective, from their eyes. Thinking about what is the experience going to be like for them. And it's not just the customer's that we think about at GitHub, it's also our employees. We want to craft experiences for our employees as well, right? Inside and outside the company. Who enjoyed the drink up last night that we put on? Yes, booze. I like it too. It's something we love to do. That's part of our making super fans outside the company. Inside the company, we do all kinds of things as well. And all of that begins with hiring, right? If you don't get hiring right, then how could you possibly have the right people in your company to foster and create the kind of culture that is necessary in order to work the way that we do? So what do you need? What do your hires have to have? We start with our network, so people that we know. We go to them and we say, hey, we know that you're awesome already. We've seen your code. We've been around you for a long time. And we know that you're a good cultural fit. And so those are the people that that comprised GitHub in the early days. From there, you have to branch out a little bit. When you do that, there's two things that you have to think about. It's something that I think about all the time when I'm talking to potential hires. Those are skill and cultural fit. So skill is technical skill if they're a developer, which most of our people are. And dealing with that is tricky. Have you ever been in a technical interview and just totally bombed it because they asked you ridiculous questions? Or maybe they asked you a riddle about how many barbers there were in Buenos Aires? Who cares? It's stupid, right? It's insane. That's madness. I just don't stop talking about it because it just makes me angry. It's a smart man right there. Write it down. I like that. I like that. Yes, I'll solve that problem. We've already solved that problem. We just don't ask people riddles. But what we do is we try to rely on open source contributions. So seeing what someone does in their own time, on their own schedule, in their own environment where they work really well. We look at that code. Because the code that you write on some whiteboard without any documentation available or Google or anything, that code is not you. And so rely on open source. Try to find people through open source. That's what we do primarily. That's not going to work in all cases because some of us don't have time to work on open source, and we're still awesome, right? But for us, it's a lot easier to do a tech interview by looking at open source than it is to do it in a glassed-in room with a whiteboard and some guy who's asking technical questions about stuff that you're never even going to use in your day job. So we go elsewhere. We find them in their own environment. And then as far as cultural fit goes, we like to take our interviewees out to a bar or a coffee shop and just sit down, relax, get them comfortable, and just talk about how they feel about the world. What is their philosophy? Does it match up with our culture? Are they fun to hang out with? Are they passionate about what they're doing? Do they care? Right? Are they going to fit in well? Does it feel awkward when you're around them? All of those things really matter, especially when you're small. So these two things are incredibly important. Additionally, when you get a little bit bigger, it's been important for us to really impress to interview, or interview to impress, I'm sorry. What we do now is, and we didn't do this in the early days because most of the people we hired were already in San Francisco, but now part of that crafting experiences is when we fly someone into San Francisco, first of all, we pay for their plane ticket, and then we hire them a driver to stand at the airport with a card with their name on it. Because it doesn't cost that much, but it's amazing, right? I mean, you always see those guys with cards, and you're like, someone's got a card. I'm just going to go out and take the subway. But when you have someone there standing with a card, guess who that person's going to want to work for? Because I'm betting it's going to be you. And so that's what we do, because it's about people. It's always about people. So what are the basics? What are some of the basic things that we've always done? So these are the things that we've done since the very beginning. Number one, of course, salary. There's an interesting thing where creative people like us, people in creative jobs, if they worry about money, they can't be as properly creative as they would otherwise. So one thing that we've always tried to do is pay people over the average for that job in the area that they're living in. We find that that really reduces the amount of stress that a person has and how much they worry about other things other than what they really want to be working on, the creative things. So we weren't able to do this in the very beginning. We started ourselves off when we went full-time. at sort of half salary, and then as we met profit goals, we would just bump our salary up. And that was a great way to keep the company always profitable and still give us a path to get to where we wanted. Eventually we set that high enough that all of the hires that we had in San Francisco were happy. Another rule is that we have no set work hours and we have no set workplace. We have people that are remote, a lot of people work from home. We're really trying to optimize here for personal human productivity. We're developers, right? We get up at 9, 10 in the morning, or maybe we get up at 5 or 6 in the morning. Or maybe we go to bed at 5 or 6 in the morning after a night of hacking. But that's when you're most productive. So why would we as a company that's interested in people force you to work from 9 to 5? That doesn't make any sense. You're going to be grumpy. You're going to have to, hook up an IV of coffee. It's going to be nasty, right? You don't want to do that. Don't do that. Okay? Just don't. Another thing we do is work very asynchronously. So we use Campfire a lot, chat application. Pull requests. If you're using GitHub, pull requests change everything. That is a way that you can do code review and not have to be around other people as much. You can have full discussions through there. And, little tiny tip, you can issue pull requests between branches on the same repository, right? It doesn't have to be a fork. So if you're in a team and you're all working on the same repository, start a branch. Every time you push a branch to GitHub, just open a pull request for it, from that to master or wherever it's going to end up, and just start having a discussion. You can do that. We don't do a good job of exposing that. We should do better. Something that we're thinking about, but it's awesome. Hardware, right? This is so simple. And so many companies I've worked for, like, here's a 7-year-old laptop. That should be good enough, right? You're a developer, whatever. You just have to press keys and crap comes on the keyboard. It's all good. No, that doesn't make any sense. This is our tool. That would be like giving a surgeon like a Sawzall and being like, yeah, it's got reciprocation. That's like way better than something that doesn't move on its own, right? No good. So we buy all of our people whatever laptop they want, whether they want something awesome like a MacBook Air, something crazy like one of those Dell machines because they're all Windowsy people. I don't know. Those the Windows world is strange. I don't quite understand it. That's why we hire people to deal with the Windows part. Now those guys are amazing, and their computers, even though they're the size of like small vehicles, and you're like, I'm just kidding. No, it's actually pretty funny though. Okay, so make sure the hardware is awesome, because that's, this is what you spend your day on. And you have to go everywhere. And if someone travels a lot, we buy them an extra computer. You want a MacBook Air to travel? Money. And it's like, okay, less money than it costs here. Holy crap. Went to some Apple reseller here. It's like 100 trillion whatevers you have. I should just fill a semi full of them in San Francisco and just drive down here. The keyboards are all wrong, though. Do you guys also know that your keyboards are like from Alice in Wonderland? Madness. All right. This is sort of irrelevant to you guys because you actually have like healthcare and stuff down here. I don't know what it's so weird, right? You like break your arm and you're like, oh, we'll fix that for you. Instead of being like, yeah, you write me a check first. That'll be $10,000. It's not like that in the US, right? It's all private insurance unless you're super poor. But if you work for a company, especially a development company, you're making money, you got to get your own health insurance or your business has to help you cover it. And so from the very first day, when we had barely no money at all, we said we are going to provide 100% health insurance for everyone. No one that works at GitHub should ever have to pay a dime for healthcare, ever. And that is insanely unusual in San Francisco. I know it sounds absurd to you, and that's good, because it is absurd. But we're trying to do our part to make it not quite so absurd. And that's one of those things. Health is generally the number one thing that people think about. You want to be healthy. You want to be healthy, and you want to be happy in what you do in life. So if you want to have happy people, then you've got to make sure that they're healthy. And there's a lot of people from countries that are crazy like ours here, and so I'm speaking to you. And if down here, I don't know what the health care is like, but if it's not great and you can get better by paying a little extra money, then that would be something that you could do to optimize for happiness in that regard. Whatever it is, just make sure it's not an issue. Vacations. Here's something that doesn't cost any money, but you can do something a little bit different. So for vacations, usually companies say you have, in the States, it's like you have 1 day of vacation, right? Actually 6 hours, you know. Down here, maybe you have like zillion, I don't know. You know, in Europe, they have a ton. In the United States, it's very uncommon to have a ton of vacation. At GitHub, we both have no vacation and infinite vacation because we just have no policy about vacation other than be responsible and make sure you take some time off when you need to. This is part of reducing the amount of process that we have at the company, right? We very much don't like process. There are certain things where you have to have process, things like how you deal with security and other things that come up. But for things that don't really matter, like why do you have to have 2 weeks or 3 weeks of set vacation? What if you don't want to take them? Then you feel bad that you didn't take them, right? And what if you feel like you need a little bit more because you just did that huge project that made everyone in the company happy? Then maybe you deserve a little bit more. I feel like I'm on a boat. I'll see you guys later. I'm just gonna go there. But trust and responsibility. That's something that hires should have. Why would we hire someone that we can't trust and that we don't think is responsible? We just wouldn't hire them in the first place. So we hire them and we say, yeah, go to wherever that tiny little island is, you know, whenever you want. That's cool. Just be responsible about it and make sure that it's not gonna put anyone else out, that it's not gonna cause problems for other people. A big thing that we like to foster at GitHub as well is mastery of new things. If you go to work somewhere, you want to be a better person for working there. So we have what I like to call the GitHub University program. I just made that up. Nobody else calls it that there, except me. Except now everyone will, because I put it on a slide. The first thing we do is you get hired at GitHub and we buy you a Kindle. We say, hey, here's a Kindle. Totally free, right? Kindle. And here's some gift certificates. Go buy whatever business and coding books that you want. You know, and I love it when people at GitHub buy business books, try to understand how all of that works, and of course, increase your technical skills. You know, it's a small thing to say, you have to buy a $120 Kindle, and you know, each book's going to be between $10 and $40. But it's a big mental overhead for you when it's coming out of your paycheck, and you got to, you know, justify that instead of going on a vacation or doing whatever it is that you might want to do with that extra money. And if I'm going to hire you to work at GitHub, I want you to be as awesome as possible. And one of the ways to do that is through educational materials. Really, it's not that expensive, right? But a company that's optimized for profit would never do that because that eats into profits. Well, you're just a cog. So cogs don't need to like read and learn stuff, right? But people do, humans do. We have a woman come in every week that teaches Spanish. Scott gave his talk in Spanish because we made that happen. Because we said, anyone in the company want to learn Spanish? Come and sit for lessons. Because we think that's pretty cool. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to start going to those. I swear. I swear. No, being down here really makes me want to learn Spanish because it's an amazing language, and then I can come back and give more talks down here and just be more comfortable. And maybe, you know, when that guy steals my laptop, I could be like, "Me gusta?" Maybe I would need to go to more lessons after that. I don't know. Another thing that we do is. It started sort of as a little tinkering with hardware project. This was called Dormy. In our old office, you had to, every time someone would buzz at the bottom of the office, it would ding the thing upstairs, and you'd have to like walk over, walk back, and then resume what you were doing. So we said, screw that. We're developers, and we know hardware and electronics and stuff, sort of. We figured out. So we had together this little Arduino project that we plugged in, well, by plug, I mean, you know, sort of hackishly screw into hopefully the right connections to the buzzer, to the door buzzer, and then hooked it up to our campfire room with Hubot, our chat robot. And so from then on, if the door buzzed, you'd be like, oh, door buzzed. Hubot Dormy. Right? And it was awesome. And this, what started out as this tiny little project, grew into us hiring a full-time guy that does sort of artistic technology for GitHub. We just employ him to do that. And he also teaches us about Arduino and hacking every Wednesday. We get together at 5 o'clock p.m. and he just gives us a lesson. And it's fun, you know? It's nice to have. It's cool. And we can do it, I think, because we've been successful through optimizing for happiness, and that's a huge part of it. Conferences. Conferences are amazing. I love conferences. This conference is, that graffiti out there, take a picture in front of that graffiti, because that'll be like the best picture you've ever taken. It's just like, you're like standing there. I did a GQ pose earlier. Yeah. In front of that, and it's amazing. You know, I'm going to put that on the cover of something someday, I think. But conferences are great. It's great for traveling. What we do at GitHub is anyone that gets accepted to a talk at a conference, we will pay for them to go there. And if it's international, then we will almost always pay for someone else in the company to accompany them. Because it sucks to travel alone to a foreign country. You know, it's just, that's a lot of time alone, and it's weird, and so we like to do that. Because they're increasing their skills, but it's also a huge recruitment tactic as well. This is an example of a win-win situation where the person that's going to the conference wins because they get to go and experience new stuff, get in front of people and share their knowledge. But GitHub wins as well because now you've got this huge audience listening to someone from GitHub share their knowledge, and now you're like, hey, that GitHub sounds pretty cool. They're working on some interesting technology. And then you want to work for GitHub, which gives us a larger pool of people to choose from for us to find the right kind of people. So it's a huge recruiting thing. And there's a few little things that we do just because they're awesome, and we can. Things like we buy everyone in the company a new iPhone. When the 4Ss came out, we said, everyone in the company, here's your new 4S. Well, it wasn't that simple. You got to go online with the app, and it's a nightmare. But we did get them new iPhones. And that's, you know, it's because it's nice. And it sucks to be behind in your iPhone because your contract's not renewing for a year, and you're stressing about it because you're like, I don't know, oh God, everyone will know. So we're reducing stress. This is a stress-reducing maneuver. That way you can think better about your creative tasks. We fully cover, or not fully, but we cover up to a certain amount moving expenses. If we hire someone, then it shouldn't suck to have to move to San Francisco to work for us. It doesn't make any sense. So we have a stipend right now that we will just give you and say, here's money to cover expenses. And something we're trying to deal with right now is because of the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service in the United States that keeps track of taxes and stuff, we're trying to figure out if it's better to give them a big bonus that's basically cut in half because of taxes that they can just have and use, or whether they should keep receipts and then be reimbursed for them. And the way that I like to think about it is that receipts are terrible. Everybody hates collecting receipts and classifying what they were for and submitting them and having to wait a long time to get paid back. And so the way I like to think about those kinds of problems is through that crafting experiences guiding saying. And so for me, my angle when I discuss this with the people at GitHub is, why don't we just give them a bigger bonus and just say, here's money, it should cover whatever you need. And then don't have to worry about all these receipts and crap, because that is just, it sucks, right? So we'll see what happens with that. It ends up being way more expensive, but so it's always, you know, you don't want to overstep your bounds of happiness. If you go too far, too quickly, then you'll probably be out of business, and then nobody's happy, right? That's like the super unhappy, optimizing for the most sadness. So don't do that, right? Again, everything in moderation. Bonuses are an interesting topic. They're tricky, just like diving into a pool of gold bullion. Do you realize what would happen if you tried to do that?
I don't know, but I want to know.
Yeah, it would. Here's my idea. All right, check it out. So I think you could do this, but you would have to put pipes under the gold and pump just a lot of air through it to aerate the gold pieces, right? So you would have then you would have a liquid, a kind of a liquidish gold system. I'm not sure though if you did that, if you jumped in, you would just directly hit the bottom of the room, though. So this requires more experimentation. We're working on this room at GitHub right now. It's not, his depth gauge says 90 feet. You know, we're only like, yeah, I'm not going to tell you where we are. But the really interesting thing to notice about bonuses is that it really highlights the difference between how you handle them, the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is me saying, hey, if you do something, I will give you this reward. And so you want to do it because you want that reward. Intrinsic motivation is you doing a thing just because you want to do it, because you like to do it. It's rewarding for you. And so when we approach bonuses, and it's not always a cash bonus, we might send someone on a vacation, pay for a vacation because they did a great job on something and they need to relax, or it might be a bottle of whiskey or anything, right? Just an experience that we have with them. Take them out to a really fancy dinner or whatever. But the way we do it is always by preserving intrinsic motivation. If you tell someone that you'll give them a $10,000 bonus if they launch a project on a certain date, then they will almost always launch the project on that specific date. But it very well may also be just a pile of crap, because they're optimizing for reaching that date, not for doing a good job. And that's the problem with offering people rewards beforehand. And so what we do is we say, let's all build awesome stuff together, and if you do an especially awesome job, then we will give you some kind of treat as a thank you. And that helps to keep intrinsic motivation thriving. That's how we handle bonuses. We bonus when we can. And I think it's really important we let our people know that we appreciate them in all kinds of small ways. That's really important. People need to be recognized. It's something that we all crave. So companies are made of people, but not people acting alone. It's the teamwork, the teams that comprise a company. Those are also really important to happiness. We like to rethink everything about how business is done. I like to call it thinking from first principles, which means never doing something the same way that other people do it just because they're successful maybe and they do it that way. I don't really care, because their company might work in a drastically different way than we do. I want to think about everything from the beginning and for how it would make sense to us. I think that copying other people is the fastest way to mediocrity. You're not going to build a visionary company that way. The way that we work looks something like this. I call it a liquid lattice structure. You've got these small nodes which represent small teams of people, and then you've got a huge number of connections between them. You don't have a hierarchical org chart at GitHub. The way that this works is through these flexible, I call it highly connected, flexible microstructures. I do, really. I actually call it that. It starts out with these small teams, these small self-managed teams. And that's important because, especially now as we're starting to grow much bigger, as we're having to scale out the way that we work, having all of these small teams lets us do that. It means that we don't have to put in this huge management structure, because the small teams sort of self-collect around an idea or a feature that they want to work on, and then they make that happen. And they manage themselves. And the leadership in those small teams arises naturally through ability and merit. Whoever in that project knows the most or feels the most strongly about something, they will end up leading that small project. And then this can be replicated across the whole company. We can scale out, we can add, it's just like scaling out an architecture. You add another server, you add another server, you add another server. We add more small teams. We don't add specific small teams, though. Generally, we hire people for something initially, and then that person can move around a little bit. You might think, well, this is getting pretty crazy. How do you prevent chaos? And I know you're looking at this guy and you're like, why is he holding like a really weird cane? It's clear that he can stand. And what? No, here's a picture that you might recognize a little bit better. I know you guys, baseball, what? I know, it's kind of a boring game. So to prevent chaos, you have to do this. You have to point in a direction, or someone on. So one of those little nodes in that liquid lattice structure, that's going to be us, the board, the four of us that kind of comprise the founding team. We take it upon ourselves to think strategically mostly about the company and where it's going. Like, what are the big grand things that we want to accomplish? And so we point in a direction, and then everyone else in the team can look at us pointing that direction and say, oh, well, I know how to get there. You know what I can do. Now I know where to go. And so that's how we prevent chaos in this collection of small teams that are all working together. And right, being strategic about what direction you're moving is important. And again, part of that liquid lattice structure is that you have to have motion from team to team. It's so awesome. So you're wondering, how is a dog relevant to this? Well, I'll tell you. The reason is because if something we try to do is not have titles that are too narrow. So most of our people are going to be like developer or designer or something like that, right? Something very broad. And the reason we do that is so that people feel comfortable taking on other roles and not saying, well, I don't do that because I'm a JavaScript specialist. No, you're a developer, which means that, hey, if you want to go write some Ruby code, that's cool. And you should feel like you can do that. That shouldn't be something that you shirk off because of your title. And so you should be, when you do that, people can be, if someone falls off of a project, then another person can just pick it up and keep going. That's what I was going at with that slide. I know you thought I wasn't gonna get there. I brought it home. And additionally, if there's not a lot of oversight, we push responsibility way down in order to prevent chaos at that level, or where things just don't happen, where things stop happening because we're not really paying attention. We have a culture of shipping. We've always had this. This is the ship it squirrel. He's in charge of being in Campfire when someone wants you to ship something. And so this image really is, it sums up how we feel about getting product out the door. Anytime someone puts that in Campfire, you know that you're doing a good job. And we've built this up from the very beginning. All right. It's also important, and for us, it's something we spend a lot of time on, reducing the barriers to shipping software. We deploy to production probably 50 times a day, something like that, through Campfire. You just say Hubot deploy GitHub to production, and it just happens. So that's another way that we can really foster shipping product. And that leads into another sort of human desire, which is to be, to feel like you have a purpose, to make sure that what you're doing really matters. The last sort of element of this triple people organization environment collection of items that we do is the environment. And so the way that we started GitHub was in Campfire. Campfire was our original office. It was our first and most important office. And really, it's still our primary office. It helps us work asynchronously. We can be one place, people can be having discussions about things, and then we can come back and really look over that log and see what happened. Eventually, we got a real office. And I know you're looking at this and you're thinking, this is messy. But I don't think of it that way. I call it optimized for serendipitous connections. Right? Because we can move things around here. We can shape the space to how we want it to be. People are milling around. And so you're constantly talking to people that you wouldn't otherwise if things were not quite so flexible. This is how our office looked in the very, very early days. Just us collected around a table, talking about things and being close. Having someone being able to ask someone a question directly across the table, that's very nice. Being in close proximity. We kept this going until it sort of got ridiculous at our old office. It started looking a little bit like this. But it was nice, sort of, but we really wanted a little bit more room. And so about 6 months ago, we moved into a much, much bigger place. It looks a little bit more like this. Now we have ample space to really develop the kinds of areas of the office that we think are necessary to foster more serendipitous connections. People just randomly running into each other, having a discussion, and then coming up with ideas that way. Casual collaboration. Here's two of our guys, Jason on the left and Matt on the right. An example of how we work is these two people do completely different jobs. Jason's a designer, and Matt is lead developer on GitHub Enterprise. So we like people to mix together. Sitting next to someone that's a designer is great. You can pick up a few Photoshop skills while you're there. You can learn things that you wouldn't otherwise learn just by being close to them. So we do a lot of this, just keep people close together, but in open spaces so that you can move around, and when teams change, it's easy to pick up your stuff and move to a different location that might be closer to that team. We watch a lot. We like to rickroll our visitors, obviously. We just got these chairs in not too long ago, but this is sort of what our front area is starting to look like right now. We're still building this out. But we want to have a lot of interactive kind of things up front so that when people come in, they can see this. And what's going to be on this TV screen is sort of an interactive thing where it's going to be an Octocat, except you're going to be able to stand in front of it with a Kinect and like wave your arms around, and the Octocat legs will do the same thing. And so these kinds of fun little ideas are really important, we think, to having people just play together, right? Be comfortable, be silly together. That's important for being comfortable enough to bring up ideas that maybe seem crazy at first. We like to be able to move our space around a lot. This is our shipping area. This is emblematic of just having flexibility in the space, and if you need to move stuff or have a bunch of boxes over here, then that's okay. There's not some grand scheme that says that you can't do that. We have a wall that has sticky grams on it. Do you guys know what sticky grams are? Sticky grams are, if you use Instagram, do you guys use Instagram? Yeah, Instagram's amazing. So StickyGram is a service that will print your Instagrams onto magnets, and then you can put them on your fridge or your crazy metal wall that you have in your office. So just a little thing that we like to do is we have a subscription to this service, and they only do it for us because I brought the idea to them and they made it for me, which is weird. They might do it for everyone at some point. But what they do is every month they send us 4 packs of these magnets that are produced from all of the GitHub employees, and especially the ones that were well liked. And so this is another example of a little thing that we can do to spruce up the office a little bit, make it feel a little bit better, a little more collaborative. People are having shared experiences. We're helping craft those new experiences by remembering the old ones. This is the game area, of course, with our brand new sweet drum set. Pretty awesome. I find that if I'm working on a really hard problem, just taking a little bit of a break, going and playing a game for a little while, that really helps to get your creative juices flowing again. Just don't think about the problem for a second. You'll come back and you'll have that problem solved. And we want this to happen at GitHub and after work so that people can be together a little bit more and really enjoy the environment that they're in. You guys all know Scott, right? Senor Scott Chacon. Scott is amazing at coming up with ideas for rooms at the office. So one of the rooms that he's built out, we call the Executive Lounge. It looks like this. It's in the very beginning, in the very front of the office. He did it mostly just because he thought it would be awesome. That was kind of the primary driving factor. But we turned what was just an empty sort of room into a really great meeting space, somewhere that's really great to take prospective employees, and it sort of immediately immerses them in the culture of GitHub, where you walk into an office that at first looks kind of normal, and we say, hey, why don't you come into this room? And we bring them, we open the sliding door, and you see this room, and you're just like, whoa! Immediately, you know what GitHub is all about. It's about having these crafted experiences, just hiding behind a door. It costs a little bit more than maybe a traditional meeting room, but not much. It does have like a super expensive Persian rug, but it's real. It's real. We also have what Scott calls the situation room. If you guys have seen... If you guys have ever seen The West Wing or been to the White House or been President of the United States, then you might recognize this room. We modeled it after the Situation Room in the White House. This is where all of the chiefs of staff and the super important people go to talk about war situations and really complex problems. And so we wanted a room where we could do the same thing. And just like in the White House, you know, I'm sure they have Independence Day on all the time because it makes whatever problem they have seem a lot better in comparison. But we have the clocks that tell us these are different time zones that GitHub employees are in. We needed a conference room that was big enough for a little bit larger meetings when we have people from outside the company that need to come in, a place to sit down with them. But of course, you know, it had to be awesome. And it doesn't take much. It just takes a little bit of creativity and investing in the humans that are going to be taking part. Because it's way more awesome to come into this room than it is a traditional meeting room at most companies. And of course, we have the custom-made GitHub kegerator. This is a kegerator that I put together with my friend, Rob, from down in San Diego. And we made the plans together, and he crafted this beautiful top with inlaid wood. The Octocat is made of wood, inlaid, by hand. And so we can go there and pour ourselves a beer and hang out, and we're going to have some tall tables ready for people to sit at and chat. And that brings these serendipitous connections between people that want to stand around and have a beer and chat about things, because it's so valuable to just chat about your company and about ideas for the future. Experiment. You know, you start thinking differently when you've had a couple of beers in you. And of course, what company that is optimized for happiness doesn't have one of these? This is our bar. This is actually the first piece of furniture that we had in our first office after that big table. And this is really, it's just about enjoying a fine whiskey with a good friend. I mean, that's one of life's really great pleasures, is to be able to sit down in the executive lounge with one of your buddies, pour yourself a scotch, sit down, put your feet up, relax, and talk about what the future might hold. That's what happiness is at GitHub. And not just GitHub. This is something that anyone can do. It just requires thinking a little bit different about what it means to run a company. And so, if you guys are interested in starting businesses, then I would very much encourage you to think about what I've talked about here today. Think about people. Think about why companies exist. And if you haven't done a startup, or you're thinking about doing it, I really want to encourage you to do that. It's an amazing experience. And so my advice is, get one of those books. Write down those things that piss you off. Fix it with technology. And then optimize that business for happiness. So, to summarize, I would like to give you a proof so that you can leave here feeling like you really feel that this is true, because I've done like a 5-slide proof for you. So here's the math. This is my word math for you. All right, so optimizing for happiness. That's what I'm talking about, right? Optimizing for happiness means investing in humans, because people are what make up a company. Investing in humans means you're going to have a happy team. That just naturally follows. A happy team, of course, means a great product, because you're being creative, you're working when you want, you have a great environment in which to have meetings and drink scotch. So, through all of these things, you're going to foster the kind of environment, the kind of ideas and creativity that lead to an awesome product decisions. Great products lead to happy users, and happy users lead to paying customers. Paying customers, of course, lead to more money. Remember, we all still like money. Having paying customers means that you'll have more of it. And having more money means that you'll have a better ability to optimize for happiness. We've come full circle. So now that you know that companies are built for people, you can go out there and you can optimize for happiness. Thank you.
I hear you, and I'm thinking about how do you handle your mistakes in this process? because I'm sure you did some mistakes. So, what kind of experiences did you had
Yeah,
all these 4 years?
Yeah, so we have made mistakes, of course. Everyone makes mistakes. Sometimes you'll hire a person that you thought would work out, and they don't. And that's okay, right? You have to realize it and take action on it. But it probably works out better in the long run anyway, because if you have to fire someone, let someone go, it means that they will probably be happier somewhere else anyway, somewhere where the culture fits better their way of thinking about the world. So you have to be diligent about that and be very careful about your culture. Things that damage your culture, things that are counter to the culture that you've created, have to be rectified quickly, or it will become problematic. Did you have any kind of specific mistakes in mind? I mean, just having a very flexible structure and having small teams that are able to act quickly on mistakes works really well too, you know? When something goes wrong, management doesn't have to come in and say, hey, you, fix that problem. People just fix it naturally because the responsibility has been pushed down to everyone.
Hi. One of the keys of your optimizing for happiness, I think, is you bootstrap your company. Because the question is how can we make the investors optimize for happiness also? Because the investors also always optimize for profit.
Right.
And there's a lot of startups that got investors to get online. So maybe that question is for all of us, I think.
Yeah, so, well, restate the question in 4 words. I mean, what is the, can you just say the question again?
Yeah, I mean, how can we make the investor invest in happiness?
So how can investors, oh, okay.
And not for profit.
I think it just requires educating them. You know, if you have investors, talk about them and say, we want to try out investing in people a little bit more because we think it will end up being more profitable for you anyway.
Yeah, I agree, but
so I think it's communication, right? It's a process. It's just, I don't know, show them this talk. I think it was recorded, right? Make them sit down for however god-awful long this talk was and make them watch it.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Tom. Hey, here.
What? Where?
Here.
Aha!
So I was just wondering, how do you founders share your vision with the rest of the company?
It's through, well, there's a lot of drinking involved. We find that that's a really great way to do it. We also are in Campfire almost every day. And so that's really where we talk about ideas. And sometimes it's not just, the visions that we have don't necessarily come from, you know, we don't sit down, make up all our vision statements and then spread them to the company. These are things that arise organically over time through discussions with people in the company as well. So just through discussions that happen in Campfire and over email and through drinking, we try to push them down. And it's rare that we'll send out an email and say, this is the way that things are. Mostly it's through casual interactions while we're just sitting around the office. At the off-site meetings, or at the summits that we do where everyone comes together, that is, I guess, one of the biggest ways that we do it. It happens twice a year. And that's where we can do presentations and say, hey, here's kind of what we think the future of GitHub is going to be. And people are free to disagree with us, and we have discussions about it. I like to call GitHub the company of the compelling argument, which means that if I come up with some kind of vision that I think is appropriate, anyone in the company can come up to me and say, I don't think that that's the way to do it, and try to convince me otherwise. And I have to try to convince them that it's the right thing to do. And if they don't think it's the right thing to do, then they might not end up doing it. And so that really leads you to come up with compelling arguments and really have done your research and thinking about something to convince other people that something has to be done that way.
Thank you.
Tom, left here. So running a company which is more than 3 people now takes a lot of time, and deciding on new offices and tables and sofas and that kind of stuff takes a lot of time.
Yep.
And so do you have time and energy to write code? Like, I mean, the founders write code these days, or how much people on GitHub are not related to code? I mean, you have administrative people related on GitHub nowadays. I mean, you are 40-something people,
Yep.
and how much of them are not related to writing code?
I'd say, so we're 47 people, probably 10 of those are not developers. So that's support, business operations, office manager. We've got our tech artist guy, and then a handful of other things. Personally, I don't write that much code anymore. Mostly it's because I do a lot of traveling and speaking, although I'm going to try and cut that down a little bit, so maybe I can do some more development. Although at this point, I get distracted with other things that are related to the business that it would be hard for me to be on business critical things. So it'll be more experimental type of things, maybe do some more open source stuff. I have some open source projects that really need some attention. So not as much as I used to. I don't code nearly as much as I used to, but it's still primarily in GitHub, it's almost all developers. We pride ourselves in having very few support people, or as few as are necessary to support that many people, which means basically no managers, right? There's no one that just manages people. Exactly. Point the direction. Yeah.
Bueno, si tienen más preguntas, se las pueden hacer después en Drink Up. Hay un Drink Up de Business Vision, tantos invitados, así que pueden seguir con más preguntas. We don't have time for more questions.
Okay. Great. Thank you all for coming.